So you can modify the route provider. So that will basically make it so that it just can't route to that other report at all.
Yes.
And then you can remove the call activity controller, which is the code behind that call report. Like I said, it's not necessary because it'll never get called. But if you're trying to make the report a bit smaller, these are the call activity controller is one that can just be taken right out.
And one more doubt, like, are they using the same library provided by the Viva, like the JavaScript library, or that they are using some different library? Because
I believe it's the exact same library.
no, because in the same library we have only the JavaScript, but they have not used any AngularJS calling feature. But there is no such examples over there. That is,
Sorry, I'm getting a lot of background noise.
So I'm saying, like, can you go to that queries.js? What's the last one? The last tab that was open.
Yeah, so this is part of them putting it in Angular. They just kind of recorded.
Yeah, defining the objects, like they are creating an array simply.
Right, so these defines the queries that are available, but this doesn't run the queries. They actually get run over here in endpoints.js. And then endpoints.js is just essentially pulling the query configuration out of here and then using its underlying data service, the ds.runQuery, to actually run the queries. So there are some kind of middle layers that are being used that are not part of the normal library, but it is ultimately falling back and being run by the normal data service that is available.
Okay, great. Got it. No problem. Let's continue.
Okay. Any other questions before we move on to the territory report or to the account report?
No, please continue.
Okay. So the next point was about the account report and kind of turning it into a territory level report. So the main change is just to get it to basically increase its query scope. That's kind of the main thing that we need to do. So we need to get it to not filter by the current account, not look at the current account, not filter by that. So that's, let's see, do I still have that open? I think so. Here we go. So this one is not built using Angular. This report is just kind of raw JavaScript and jQuery. And so it's kind of a different beast. But the two files that we're going to be working with are index.html and scripts.js. So first, right, over in scripts, we need to actually find the places where it's running those queries and tell it to not filter. And so that's in these get approved emails and somewhere around here. Get calls for account. Yeah. So in those two functions, we can kind of see here, we have this, it sets the where clause and it sets it to, account ID equals the account ID and some other stuff. So we still want that other stuff because we don't want to be pulling up deleted calls or emails, and we don't want to be pulling up ones that aren't synced yet. So we just want to remove this part of the query, and so we can just rip that right out. Just get rid of that in that call query, and then all of a sudden this query is now much more general. It's, instead of just pulling the calls for the particular account, it's going to pull the calls for everybody. And then all the kind of follow-up queries that pull all the related objects will just kind of operate off of the IDs that come back from this call. And so that's for all the call-related things. this is kind of the fount of all of the data, and this is the only place you need to make that change in order to broaden the query. For the approved emails, very similar. We have our where clause here, and again, we've just, it's filtering for sent emails for the current account and some other things. We still want these other things. The status has been delivered or unsubscribed, and it actually got sent. And so we just want to rip out this accounts part of the filter. So we'll just take that out, and now we have a much more general query. So that's how we open up our queries. However, there's still another layer, because we need to make sure it doesn't try to get the current account ID, because that will actually fail in a territory level context, because there is no account that we're associated with when running in that context. So we need to make sure that the report never asks for the current account ID. And so we need to go find where it's currently doing that, which is over in index.html. It's in a function called init call summary data. So we'll go over there. I didn't just have it up. Let's call summary, next one. And so in this one, this is kind of a fairly standard pyramid of doom callback situation. So we just kind of want to remove this outer layer and start off with the get calls for account. Although it would honestly make sense to rename that function both here and in script.js, because it's no longer getting calls for a particular account, it's just getting calls. But we'll just remove this outer layer of the query, so it starts off with the call query, and then that takes care of that. Again, similarly to before, we can do some cleanup. And so the kind of main cleanups that we can do is we could just get rid of the get current account ID function entirely. We can just remove it because we're not using it. Similarly, for the get calls for account, we can rename that to something more sane, like get calls, and then remove this ID parameter, which is no longer using. So you'd want to remove that from here, and then I can be smarter about this. There we go. Remove it from here so it's not looking for that. And so that's kind of the main cleanup to get rid of the code that's no longer being used. And then same for the get emails. For the get emails, again, just find where that's being called in here by searching for it. The layout of this is not the most intuitively obvious, at least to me, and so I always have to end up searching for things to find them. I mean, it's convenient in that it's only in ever one of these two files, or at least everything I've been looking for is only ever in one of these two files, but having to use Control F a lot is a bit inconvenient. And so, yeah, you would just remove that parameter from, right, it doesn't have that parameter, it's getting the ID from somewhere else.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The account ID is assigning in the my activity, call my activity, and they are using this account ID and this approved email.
The call activity?
Yeah, just search for SEC ID. You will get that. Yeah, ID. No, there is no T.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's correct, sir.
Oh, wait, it was correct? Yeah, that one. Get calls for accounts. This is inside of get approved emails. It's getting used.
No, in the previous, the index HTML, they are assigning this SEC ID with the account ID. Just
yeah.
Then they are using
you'd want to hunt that down and get rid of that.
Yeah, we did that actually. We removed the first two lines, but the whole functionality stopped working because here we are getting the widget.
Oh yeah. I mean, did you clean up the queries? Any place that was being used in a query?
Yes, actually I made it not equal to null, so that actually I will get some results. That account viewed underscore not equal to null like that.
Oh, okay.
So it is a generic one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that should be basically the same because account ID should never be null. So
yes.
So yeah, that did that work? Did that broaden the query and bring in the?
Yes, it retrieved all the approved email. The account ID is exists. That means obviously it is linking with one account and it fetches the results.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So that sounds reasonable to me. Okay, yeah. That sounds reasonable.
So, and I tried one more thing. Like there are I tried to fetch the territory. On the base of the territory, I'll fetch all the accounts, and here I pass account VOD in the ACC ID, like that list of IDs.
Wait, I'm sorry. Run that past me again.
Like for the current user, I fetched the territory, and from the territory, I fetched the accounts, and from that I got the account IDs, and I passed for the particular territory like that, instead of running for all accounts.
Okay, yeah, that
I made it a little bit complex, yes.
Right. I mean, that should actually end up being equivalent in this context because the VMOX should only be syncing down accounts that are aligned to territories that the user has. So, I mean, the My Insights reports only query against things that are on the iPad. And so the idea of getting rid of that query already is that the accounts that we're going to get back from our search are already filtered by the VMOCs.
Okay.
Yeah. So in this case, based on that logic, even if we keep the query open, that's fine, right? Because they're only accounts which are associated to this territory, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's why that would be my approach. Is I would let the sync handle filtering it down to just the user's territories, and then we can take advantage of that and just say, give me everything on the iPad.
Right.
And it will only be things that are aligned to the user's territories because that's the only things being synced.
Yeah, right.
Okay, makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So where actually that other approach could get used is if you wanted to add a UI widget for filtering by territory in case, for example, the user is a manager or someone that has multiple territories. Being able to add some sort of pick list, I mean, like the existing out-of-the-box territory report has a pick list for which territory of my available territories am I looking at, then filtering, then querying kind of first the territories and then the accounts from that territory makes a lot of sense because we no longer necessarily, we might want everything on the iPad, but we might not. And so we kind of need to be careful of that. So if you want to add that sort of filter, then, although actually probably the better way to do it is just go ahead and query for everything on the iPad and then add it to the filtering function. There's already the there's the function that that filters the data down and just shows the things that match the filter. So that would probably be the way to do it with the territory. You kind of you query all the accounts and then separately you query the territory information. And then here we go. And then you'd add it to the filters that this function is filtering on.
Yeah, this is basically we are using that when we switch from all activity to my